The diner was one of those old roadside places where the coffee was always hot and the jukebox still worked if you smacked it just right. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet except for the clink of dishes and the low hum of conversation. At a corner booth sat Henry Carter, 81 years old, a Korean War veteran, and a man who wore his years with quiet dignity. His back was a little bent, his hands shook when he reached for his cup, but his eyes still carried the same steel they had when he was a young soldier. Henry came here every morning. The staff knew him, the regulars greeted him, but still, he was often alone. His wife had passed 10 years earlier, his friends one by one had gone, and his son, well, his son lived a life on the edge, one Henry didn't fully understand. On this morning, Henry had barely taken his second sip of coffee when the bell over the diner door jingled. In walked a group of young men, rough, loud, carrying themselves with that careless arrogance of people who think the world owes them something. Among them was one particularly brash thug, muscles bulging under a tight shirt, a sneer plastered across his face. They took the booth behind Henry, laughing loudly, cursing, making a scene. The waitress looked nervous, but no one dared say anything. Henry kept his head down, hoping they'd lose interest. But the thug noticed him. "Hey, old man," the thug's voice cut across the room, mocking. "You gonna sit there all stiff like you're still in uniform?" Henry didn't respond. He'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. But silence, to a bully, was fuel. The thug stood, swaggered over, and leaned down close. "What are you, some kinda soldier boy? Think you're tough?" Henry finally looked up, his voice calm. "I served my country, that's all." The thug smirked, then suddenly, slap. The sound cracked through the diner. Henry's head snapped to the side. Gasps filled the room. The waitress froze, coffee pot trembling in her hands. Nobody moved. Henry didn't raise his hand, didn't shout, didn't fight back. He simply straightened his posture as much as his body would allow and said quietly, "Son, you don't know what respect is." The thug laughed cruelly, turning to his friends as if to celebrate. But just then, the diner door opened again. And this time, the air changed. A group of bikers walked in, leather jackets, patches, boots heavy against the tile floor. At the front was a man with broad shoulders, weathered face, and a presence that turned heads instantly. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Henry, they softened. "Dad," he said, his voice deep and steady. The diner went silent. The thug froze. The veteran's son, a full-patched member of the Hells Angels, had just walked in. Henry exhaled, relief mingled with something like pride. "Michael," he said, his voice breaking slightly. Michael walked straight over to his father, then looked at the thug who had struck him. "Did you put your hands on my dad?" His tone was calm, almost too calm, which made it all the more terrifying. The thug stammered, trying to backtrack. I was just joking around, man. No harm." But Michael stepped closer, towering over him, and the rest of the bikers fanned out across the diner, their presence alone enough to send shivers down spines. Michael leaned in, his voice low, steady. "You don't lay a finger on a man who bled for this country. You don't disrespect a veteran. And you sure as hell don't touch my father." The thug's bravado evaporated. His friends looked away, suddenly small. The entire diner was dead quiet, every eye watching. Michael straightened, then did something no one expected. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't start a brawl. Instead, he turned to his father, placed a hand gently on his shoulder, and said, "You okay, Dad?" Henry nodded, his eyes moist. For years, he had worried about the path his son had chosen, the rough crowd, the outlaw life. But in that moment, he saw not the leather jacket, not the patches, but the boy he had raised, the man who still knew what loyalty, respect, and family meant. Michael turned back to the thug, his eyes hard as steel. "You're gonna apologize, right now." The thug swallowed, glanced around at the dozen bikers watching him, and muttered, "Sorry." "Louder," Michael demanded. The thug's face burned red. "I'm sorry, sir." Henry simply nodded. "Go on, son. You've said your piece." The thug and his crew left quickly, the bell over the door jingling in their retreat. Slowly, the diner filled with the sound of whispers, of quiet relief. The waitress hurried over to refill Henry's coffee, her hands still shaking. Michael sat down across from his father. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Henry said softly, "Didn't think I'd ever see the day you walked in here like that." Michael smiled faintly. "Didn't think I'd have to." Henry reached across the table, his old hand covering his son's. You may ride with the angels, son, but today, you were mine. The biker's tough exterior cracked, just for a second, as he nodded. Always, Dad. The diner, once filled with tension, now felt different. Everyone had just witnessed something powerful, not just the defense of a veteran, but the bond between a father and son, forged in pain, strengthened in loyalty, and unbroken by time or distance. And in that diner, on that quiet Tuesday morning, kindness didn't come with softness. It came with strength, with respect, and with love that stood taller than fear. Because sometimes, kindness is standing up. Sometimes, it's protecting the ones who can't fight back. And sometimes, it's just reminding the world that heroes don't fade with age, they only grow stronger when someone believes in them. So if this story touched you, if it reminded you of the power of respect and family, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because more stories like this, stories that restore faith in humanity, are waiting for you right here.